job, because sometimes what the law requires runs counter to what the majority may want.
President Donald Trump announced last week that the U.S. military shot down a boat running drugs from Venezuela, resulting in the death of 11 gang members. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said he met with the Colombian ambassador, who asked for assistance from the United States.
The country of Colombia wants to partner with us to see if we can help them with their drug problem. The stronger you are, the safer the world will be and the more likely for peace.
The White House is addressing last month's fatal stabbing of 23-year-old Irina Zarutska, a Ukrainian refugee and restaurant employee in Charlotte, North Carolina, on a train by a repeat offender. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt blames Democrat policies.
When Brown was arrested yet again in January of this past year, a Democrat judge, I will add, was a strong supporter of former Vice President Kamala Harris, released this insane criminal once again without requiring him to pay any bail.
That suspect was free and allowed to commit this murder because of North Carolina's soft on crime policies, which former U.S. Attorney Andy McCarthy calls dumb.
Their bail law allows the judge to take into account whether the person is a risk of flight. Here, as you point out, this guy had a very long record, lots of bench memos, bench warrants, which means he didn't make his court appearances. So there was lots of evidence to say he was a risk of flight. He was obviously a danger to the community given the kind of crimes he'd been convicted of and the evidence of this crime. So what North Carolina lets you do in that situation is they force the judge to set bail, but you can set it at an inordinately high amount so the guy will never meet it. That's a dumb way to do it. You should just have a provision in the law that lets the judge say, look, there's no amount of money that I would allow this guy to post and let him back out on the street. But that's the fiction they go through.
And a media watchdog is calling a CNN commentator to task for trying to play the race card in the wake of that brutal murder by a black suspect in North Carolina. Chad Groening has more.
It perhaps shouldn't come as a surprise that the legacy media would attempt to deflect the backlash over its failure to report the August 22nd brutal murder of a Ukrainian refugee by an alleged black assailant on a transit train in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there has been much outrage on social media as to why suspect DeCarlos Brown was allowed to be on the streets after 14 previous arrests. But CNN's far-left commentator Brian Stelter felt the urge to lecture about racism.
Some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping.
Justine Brooke Murray is a media analyst with the Media Research Center.
The perpetrator even was caught on camera saying, "I just killed a little white girl," or something along the sorts. Yet it's only a hate crime when it is a black individual being killed, whether it's by a police officer or whether it's just someone defending themselves and other subway passengers on the subway like Daniel Penny was doing.
Murray is convinced that the left-wing media really believes white victims deserve it.
Legacy media outlets, including Brian Stelter, deep down really, truly believe that anytime a white woman is murdered by a black criminal or a minority criminal, that they asked for it because it's quote-unquote restorative justice to them. So deep down, they really believe that white people just deserve this.
I'm Chad Groening.
And finally, flood alerts in the eastern U.S.
A stalled front off the East Coast will continue to bring the potential for high surf, rip currents, and some coastal flooding. Florida getting pockets of heavy rain that could lead to flash flooding through Thursday morning. I'm Janice Dean.
More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app for your Apple or Android device. I'm Rusty Peel.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildmon, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Issues is the name of this program. It's Wednesday, September the 10th, 2025. We hope you are having a good day. Why would we hope otherwise? Right? Huh?
Right. That's right.
Why would we want people to have an average day or a bad day? No, we want you to have a good day.
Amen.
Or a mediocre day.
We
don't want mediocrity.
I'm channeling my inner Joel Osteen.
I knew it was coming.
You know?
Yeah.
Huh? You want me to smile?
Yeah, get your smile.
All right.
Every day is a Friday, Tim.
Hey, Ed Battagliano. Good morning, brother.
Good
Ed.
morning, Tim.
You assumed that there were no bad Fridays.
Right. Well,
I'm just going by what the brother
book said.
Wrote in the book that probably sold 2 million copies.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Oh, more than that, probably. But Wesley Wildmon. Good morning, Wesley.
Good morning.
Fred Jackson.
Good morning, Tim.
Lot to talk about today on the program. Not all of it's good. We talk about having a good day, but we got a lot to talk about. Abraham Hamilton III, who hosts the Hamilton Quarter each afternoon on American Family Radio from 5 to 6 o'clock Central Time, and is a constitutional attorney. He will be with us at the bottom of the hour. Abe worked a long time in the justice system as a assistant district attorney, both I think in the Houston, Texas area and his home city of New Orleans, that area. Anyway, I want to ask him why we have such a high, and this is a hard word for me to say, recidivism.
Right.
Did I get it right?
Recidivism rate.
Among criminals. In other words, why do we read time and time again about criminals committing acts of violence against people, and you learn that their rap sheet is like 3 pages long? You go, the average person goes, what in the world is this person doing out of jail?
Right.
What is he on the street? I say he because most of the time it's a male. Why is he back on the streets, making on unsuspecting public? So we're going to talk to Abe about that because he will have answers, maybe not satisfactory answers, because I've asked other people in law enforcement, and I don't like the answers that I hear.
Our system is not a good one. Okay, and I'm saying like
in places.
Well, I'm saying in terms of when we put people in prison, they're not, for the most part, they're not learning how not to do things when they get out. They're not getting, and I'm not saying you teach them basket weaving and that kind of thing, but your question about recidivism, nothing happens in prison that makes them think, you know what, rehabilitate. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't spend my life doing this. For the most part, they learn how to do it better. And then they don't spend their full time in there to think, well, I don't want to go back in there for 7 years, so I'm going to stop doing it. And so anyway, that we're all thinking about these topics. We're all thinking about. I'm thinking about. We're going to get probably back to this case, this poor Ukrainian girl being murdered. How do you deal with people who are mentally ill? How do you deal with people who are drug addicts? Putting them in prison is not going to help them either. Same thing with homeless. It's just a mess.
Yes, I want to talk about that aspect. I'm not necessarily talking about that, what you're talking about, which is a very important topic. I'm talking about commit a crime, go down to the judge, and the judge says, "Hey, come back in 30 days."
Yeah, that's two different. I was going to distinguish between the two.
That kind of thing. Or here's a slap
on probation.
Slap on the wrist. Don't break into any more homes.
Yeah. Or
we might have to keep you for 3 days.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That kind of thing. Yeah. You just go, what in the world? So the situation, though, the story that's now capturing the attention of the public in the U.S. is what happened to this Ukrainian girl. She's in the U.S., in her 20s.
23 years old.
23 years old, in Charlotte, in North Carolina, and she was stabbed to death by a guy who was one of these people who was out of jail time and time again, and also obviously mentally ill. And so, Fred, what's the latest on this story?
Well, the latest on this story, the murder took place on the 22nd of August. And what really has caught the attention, and the reason that this story has caught the attention because of the release of a video from the commuter train, where DeCarlos Brown Jr. is seen stabbing this young woman from Ukraine, 23-year-old Irina Zarutska. She came to this country not long ago to get away from the war in Ukraine. Yesterday, after being charged by the state with murder, now the federal government has charged DeCarlos Brown Jr. With the killing of this young woman. And the reason the feds can do this, we are told, is because the murder took place on a commuter train. So a vehicle of mass transit, there is a federal law which allows the feds to get involved with a local case like this. Yesterday, the U.S. Attorney for Western North Carolina, his name is Russ Ferguson. He held a news conference to announce this federal charge. But what he had to say at this news conference was, I just found incredibly compelling. First of all, before he came out to have the news conference, he just got off the phone with the mother of this young lady. She doesn't speak English very well. They spoke through a translator. But the mom told Mr. Ferguson she wanted to go to America, get away from the war, but loved America. He said as soon as she got a work permit after she came here, she went out the very same day and got a job. She worked at a pizza place. She was just going her business. She wanted to stay in America, become an American citizen. And Russ Ferguson, he broke down a couple of times. This is a U.S. attorney, so it's not all business. He said he grew up in Charlotte.
Yeah. This
is my home. And to have this horrific incident happen right in the place where I live, he was very emotional about this. But he had just got off the phone with this young lady's mom. They had talked about it, how much. In fact, the mom, they talked about sending the body back to her mom there in Ukraine. And her mom said no. She loved America so much, she wanted to be buried in America.
Wow.
So this is part of the story a lot of the media won't talk about. But I want you to have a listen to U.S. Attorney Russ Ferguson. And what you're going to hear also at the tail end of this audio is FBI agent James Barnacle Jr., who is also obviously part of the investigation. Cut number 1.
Our hearts go out to Irina's family. They are suffering like any of us would be. It was a very touching call. Our hearts go out to them. She is a refugee. She literally came to the United States from a bomb shelter in Ukraine to escape the war, and she was going about her day. She was coming home from work on a light rail train, like all of us do all the time, and she was brutally murdered. As a native of Charlotte, I'm so sad to say that our city has gotten to this place.
We will continue to work with U.S. Attorney Ferguson, the Department of Justice under direction of Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the FBI Director Patel to pursue justice for Irina and her family and for the people of Charlotte.
Now, James Barnacle there mentioned Attorney General Pam Bondi. She talked about this yesterday as well. Cut number 3.
Spencer Merriweather, he believed in letting him sign a written promise to appear. He participated in passing that, agreeing to let criminal defendants sign a written promise to appear in court. That's what he was allowed to do in July. Weeks later, he murdered Irina.
Now, what Pam Bondi was talking about there is she's looking at the string of decisions. This guy, DeCarlos Brown Jr., 14 times before the judicial system. And what she's talking about is the last time he appeared, he was allowed to sign, actually took a pen and sign a written promise to appear again. And he was allowed to do this.
That's a thing? I would, you know what I'm saying? I never heard of
well,
that.
The last case, if my understanding is correct, of course, this guy, I know we're going to get into this. He's mentally ill. Okay. Yeah. The last time he got arrested was for the abuse of the 911 emergency phone call system. He called, and maybe several times called, to report that he had stuff inside of him that was making him act crazy or was speaking to him or something. I forget. It was kind of bizarre. So this last time was not a violent crime, and I'm thinking that the prosecutor and the judge said, well, we don't want to keep him in jail for that. If I might agree with that, if that's the only thing this guy had done.
Right.
But he's got a rap sheet that's fairly long and includes violence, and they still let him out.
Yes.
And that's going to blow back on them.
So what happened also yesterday, since we last were on the program here, some media outlets, Fox for one of them, started to release more than what we have seen in the video up to now. Up to now, in the video, we saw this man get out. He was sitting behind Irina, sitting behind her, and he gets up, and we now know it's a pocket knife, and we saw him lunge towards her, and that's where the video ended. Well, yesterday, the video went beyond that, and we saw her reaction to the stabbing. She was shocked. She turns around. She grabs her neck because he stabbed her 3 times in the neck. But we also saw he then walks away from the scene. And we also saw 3 individuals who were sitting near her.
Mm-hmm.
They walk away from the scene.
Yep.
To the best of my knowledge.
They leave her?
They leave
in
her.
Oh.
They just leave her. They obviously saw what happened, but they just get up and leave her.
Well, and there must have been blood everywhere.
Oh, yes.
So they knew she was injured.
I did read where one man went to her aid.
Yeah,
At least one
that
of them.
wasn't
Yeah.
in the video.
Okay.
But 3 people close by. Now, there's also been talk over the last several days that DeCarlos Brown Jr. said something along the line, I got the white girl. Now, we're going to play a little bit of that, if that's okay with you gentlemen. Yeah. The train is moving, so you got a lot of train noise. But we're going to try and see if we can pick this up, this quote that he's been quoted, that I got the white girl. All right, we can play that, cut number 2. So it's very short.
He's saying I got the white girl, white girl.
You were able to
Whoever
hear
saying that. Go ahead.
Yeah. But you can hear him say, got the white girl. Yesterday, during this news conference with the U.S. Attorney, Russ Ferguson, a reporter asked them about this. Have you determined whether he said that? At that point, the FBI was saying, no, we're not ready, but if we can prove it was him that said that, there will also be a hate crime charge against DeCarlos Brown Jr. in this. The other story that keeps coming up too is how the media has handled this story. The media pretty much has ignored it. They've been forced to because of that video to deal with it somewhat.
And the reaction in conservative social media spaces.
Especially X and Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. So yesterday, Caroline Leavitt, the spokeswoman for the White House, she did not spare the media in front of her about as far as what they have done in the way they've covered this story versus other stories where the player's skin color was reversed.
Yeah.
Okay. So cut number 8.
The majority of the media, many outlets in this room, decided that her murder was not worth reporting on originally because it does not fit a preferred narrative. Many of the journalists in this room spilled plenty of ink trying to smear Daniel Penny for defending a subway car from a deranged lunatic in New York City, but none of those same reporters lift a finger to write stories about an actual murderer. Here's the truth that every American must know. Too many innocent people across the country continue to pay the price of the failed experiment known as cashless bail that has been championed by the Democrat Party for years.
All right, that was Caroline Levitt.
Yeah.
She talked about the narrative.
Let me ask you this is so tragic. This young lady, I mean, it just breaks your heart thinking about her family back in the Ukraine, learning she was stabbed to death.
Survives the Russia-Ukraine war.
Comes to the U.S.
and gets
and she completely unprovoked.
Right.
Let me ask you this. I wonder, this is kind of a side issue, but I wonder if people in these big cities, we've all heard the jokes about people in New York just walking over dead people right down the street because nobody cares or they don't know the person and they don't want to get involved. I'm just wondering, after what happened, was it Daniel Penny?
Yes.
The former Marine.
Mm-hmm.
I say former Marine. Once a Marine, always Marine.
Right.
But remember, he took down this guy who was doing similar threats to the people on a subway in New York City.
Correct.
And the fellow that he took down, who was doing the threats to the people riding, died. And I don't know why he died. He suffocated or something like that. But
put him in a chokehold.
Put him in a chokehold.
Put him in a chokehold. Anyway, eventually Daniel Penny was
charged.
He was charged, and then he was
acquitted.
Okay. So here's my thing. My question is, I wonder if people are leery of stepping into a situation. I know that's your natural instinct of most people is to help somebody in who's being attacked, right? But I don't know. I'm just asking, do people now go, I don't want to get involved in any kind of situation like that?
I think it's a case by case, and I think it's a local by local type thing. I would say.
By the way, excuse me, it would have been too late for her. He had already stabbed. By the time people knew what was going on, he had already stabbed her.
That's right.
And looked probably in her jugular because she bled out in minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, let's do it this way. If there was enough people, if there was enough pennies out there doing what he did, and they were all being charged, then I could kind of understand what you're saying. If you watch the video, that's not the case. They sat there and just didn't move at all. They didn't look like, oh, should I do it? What should I do? Should I run? No, I don't think they didn't seem that they were wrestling.
The people that you see on the bus, on the
three people beside them, the video I saw after the fact didn't look like they were wrestling. What do? I don't know if I need to get involved because I don't want to get in trouble like Penny did. But they also, but they more so look like apathetic. Like they didn't care.
What if there's when you're sitting there in shock and stunned, maybe you see, I don't want to get stabbed by this guy either. I'm just saying that.
Well, they didn't run.
Well, there's nowhere to go. Listen.
I don't know. I'm just
I'm 67. My life experience has taught me that most people in emergency situations are passive. I don't know what the percentage is. I'm sure the studies have been done. There's a small percentage of people who get involved in that moment. Most people freeze up. Most people are overcome by fear or they don't know what to do.
Right.
But they're not the kind of people who are going to jump in and help. They're not. You don't have many Daniel Pennies.
Yes. But Daniel Penny was a trained Marine.
Yes, he was
psychologically and emotionally and physically.
Point.
He had already been trained for moments like this.
Yes.
While you're saying, and police officers are too.
Right.
That's why they run to problems.
That's why they're called first responders.
While most people flee from them.
Yes.
Like you're saying. So that's
something to consider.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I was just going to say, in most situations like that, especially with a small sample, I saw the picture. Looked like there were 3 people sitting on the opposite side of the train from Irina, and then there was DeCarlos Brown right behind her, and it seemed like there was another person behind him. So that's a pretty small sample of people.
Yeah.
One of them was a woman. I'm not saying women don't respond, but they're less likely to have that aggression to jump in. It takes a lot. It takes a lot to put yourself into a dangerous situation, Tim, like you said, where you could get stabbed. All those people wanted to go home to their families, And that's why what Daniel Penny did and his training probably entered into it. But it's a small percentage of people who are likely to intervene anyway.
Now several people on that train, did you call it a train?
Commuter train.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Light rail.
Light rail.
Did call 911. That was registered. So they evidently arrested this guy, the police, almost immediately.
Yeah.
So what's his name?
DeCarlos
Brown Jr.
Yeah. Now what about the Carolyn Levitt's sort of bringing up a double standard, is what she's pointing out too on the media coverage.
The narrative she's referring to deals with the race issue in this case. This is a black man attacking a white woman. When Daniel Penny took down this guy who was a black man on the train, the media went crazy. It's another case. Daniel Penny's a racist.
Right.
That's why he put the chokehold on this guy.
Right.
And that's why the prosecution in New York City, again, framed it that way.
It was a hate crime.
It was a hate crime.
Have y'all noticed this too on this issue, that I'm not hearing any of these, the judge or the mayor or anybody on the left putting themselves in the shoes of the victim, but they're putting themselves, that we constantly are being told, put yourself in the shoes of the criminal.
Yes.
And they list off all the problems he had, but we're not putting ourselves first and foremost in the shoes of the victim and their family and what they experience and the people and the fear that goes into now riding on this train. Those type things. Do you see? I mean, that's a shift that's happened in the media over the last 10 to 20 years as it relates to the race issue, because it's irrelevant. It should be first putting yourself in the shoes.
Okay, once you start talking about the racial dynamics of a situation, people's sensitivity is heightened. People, as I said yesterday, go into camps. But you have to ask yourself, what is really racially motivated? Daniel Penny, for example, he just happened to be on a train with a bunch of people, and the guy who was threatening people happened to be a black fella.
Well, and the people who defended what Daniel Penny did were some of the black people and brown people on the train who were afraid.
So what I'm saying is Daniel Penny didn't get on that train that day going, you know what? Who can I get into it with here? Let me pick out a black fella here because I don't like black people.
That's right.
That's the way the media sort of want to present it. Now, in the case of this man,
DeCarlos Brown.
I know he did say, and I heard it, if that's him, and it sounds like it's him saying, I got that white woman. But when you read what happened, his sayings to his sister while he was in jail, this is post-arrest, he is mentally whacked, okay? He thinks materials are in him that the government put in him. He thinks that, he's talking in third person about who stabbed her, who would stab this girl. Yeah. So he is mentally, so I'm not excusing his behavior. He needs to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. He'll probably get the death penalty or life in prison. But I don't think, I know he said, I got that white woman, but I'm wondering now, would it have mattered who was in front of him? Because he was demon-possessed is how we Christians would look at what he did right here. So I know he said, I got that white woman, but I don't think that necessarily was a hate crime, because I'm saying she just happened to be the victim because she was right in front of him at the time. That's the way I'm looking at this situation. There are racially motivated crimes in America. There always have been and probably always will be, but we have to be careful about talking about that issue.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
Can you remember the zest we had for living when we were children? I can remember how each day was exciting, something to look forward to. There was always enough energy to do whatever it was that we wanted to do. It's a wonderful thing, this zest for living. The problem is that it sometimes dies when we become adults. We are beset by all the many and varied concerns which life places on the shoulders of adults, and we often let those weight us down until the zest for living is gone. How can we maintain this childhood zest for living? Well, I've found some guidelines which will help us do that. I'd like to share them with you. One thing which helps keep the zest in living is the knowledge that your life has some lasting significance. There is in each of us the desire to be somebody. Nobody wants to be a nobody. This desire to be somebody is a God-given desire. This desire is not so much one to be rich or famous or powerful, but rather it is that of being needed, wanted, loved, to know that you matter. When we lose this feeling that we are worth something to someone other than ourselves, the zest for living goes out of life. I want to know when I die that what I have done has made a difference in the corner of the world in which I live. I want to know that I added something to the world to make it a better place. William James, the 19th century American psychologist, once said this: "The great use of life is to spend it on something that outlasts it." And Leo Roston added, "The purpose of life is not to be happy, but to matter, to be productive, to be useful, to have it make some difference that you lived at all." And of course it was the Galilean carpenter who said, "He who loses his life for my sake shall find it." Another thing which helps keep the zest in living is a positive attitude. You see, our attitude governs what kind of life we will have. Your glass is either half full or half empty. It all depends on how you look at it. In any situation, you can look for the good or you can look for the bad. You can usually find both. What you do find depends on what you're looking for. When life doesn't go exactly right, you can quit and curse the world and God, or you can pick up the pieces and start again. What you do depends on your attitude. A person can look for the good or he can look for the bad. He can be critical or he can be commending and commanding toward life. And it doesn't take an ounce more of energy to look for the good, to believe the best. The other factor involved in keeping the zest in living is a deep and active faith in the Nazarene. As a teenager, I came to the realization in my life that with him life made sense, and apart from him it was meaningless. I have long believed that with him I can achieve some great ambitions, but apart from him ambitions aren't worth having. An active faith in the Galilean answers life's deepest and most perplexing problems. A person needs to know that despite all of life's inconsistencies, God still rules. Just because you aren't always a child doesn't mean you can't have a zestful life. So keep the zest in living. It makes life more exciting.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
The Lord looks down from heaven on all mankind to see if there are any who understand, any who seek God. Psalm 14:2.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Tim Wildmon here with Ed Vitagliano, Wesley Wildmon, and Fred Jackson. And joining us now is our colleague, Abraham Hamilton III, host of the Hamilton Quarter, heard each afternoon, 5 to 6 o'clock Central Time, right here on American Family Radio. Abe also serves as our general counsel here, and he came to us after spending several years in the justice system, as they say. Abe, good morning to you.
Good morning. I'd just like to clarify my involvement in the justice system was not as a accused
You
party.
weren't a client.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. That does need to be clarified. Nor were you a superhero. You weren't a part of the Justice Hall.
Justice League.
Justice League. No, I
Excuse me.
wasn't.
That's funny.
Justice Hall.
No.
Was that embarrassing?
No, that's there is
No, man, I'm
there is a
kidding.
hall of something. I forget.
Yeah.
You're not far off.
Hall of Justice, whatever like that. Hey, you know the topic we want to talk to you about. How many years did you spend? What is your background in? Do you call it law enforcement? Do you call it law enforcement? Broadly?
Well, yeah, it is. It is law enforcement, broadly speaking. I was a major felony criminal prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for a decade. First in the Harris County District Attorney's Office in Houston, Texas, and then in the New Orleans area, I was a major felony prosecutor as well.
Why'd you want to do that?
Well, the major reason why I wanted to do it, because I grew up hearing about all of the problems with the justice system, and you know, the Lord has kind of bent me in a way. Instead of just complaining about it, why not get involved and see if you can make a difference in a positive direction? And so that's what led me to do so. And I enjoyed trial work. I enjoyed being in the courtroom and securing justice for the families of victims of criminal tragedy.
Go ahead.
Can I jump in before?
You jump right in.
I just want to jump in and ask the first question to Abe, okay? So, of course, we've been talking about the case in Charlotte, Irina Zarutska. Okay, so everyone's been talking about that. I also went back before the break and looked up some information about the Daniel Penny case, former United States Marine. He used a chokehold on Jordan Neely, also on a train. This was in New York. And Jordan Neely was a 30-year-old, this is the description, 30-year-old homeless man who had a history of mental illness and over 36 prior arrests, including charges related to assaults on women. Okay, so I think it's going to become clear that DeCarlos Brown, this is the Charlotte incident, is also going to be characterized as someone with mental illness. How did in New Orleans and then Houston, how does the justice system flesh this out? Because we're talking during the break, what the system calls mental illness now may very well be influenced by or possession by demons or simple evil. How did you guys kind of try to separate this guy? Jordan Neely had 36 prior arrests. Carlos Brown Jr. had 14, yet mental illness is going to be thrown in. How do you separate these kind of things and handle it?
Yeah, so you have in the mental health profession the mental illness standards, but in the criminal justice context, you have the mental competency to stand trial. So whenever we had a case, especially whenever I handled a case, and especially when you had some of the more egregious offenses, homicides, armed robberies, aggravated assault, things of that nature, almost as a matter of routine, defense attorneys would file a motion for mental competency examination. And in that circumstance, you would have a mental health professional that works with the state that would evaluate the defendant. And so competency to stand trial is to evaluate whether or not the person is aware of the charges that have been made against them, whether or not they have the mental capacity to assist in their own defense, and whether or not they have the ability to assess the criminal proceedings that are lodged against them. If a defendant is ruled, because some people try to say not guilty by reason of insanity, I understand that's a TV thing, and there are some things in different states that happen like that. But usually, in my experience, when you have a defendant who's been ruled legally incompetent to stand trial, they then are put in a custody of the state and in a mental health facility in an effort to enable them to regain competency. And then upon regaining competency, then they would face the charges for which they were filed, the charges that were filed against them in the first place. And so the competency standard is what is employed to determine whether or not they can stand trial to face the charges that they have been accused of.
You get your answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, Abe, here's what the average citizen gets tired of reading about. I know you do too, and you saw it. And I don't know if there's a satisfactory answer to the question I'm about to ask, because I talked to two gentlemen here who are on our staff that Abe knows that are former police officers, and I asked them, why do we read time and again or see on the television news somebody who does something heinous, like murder somebody, and you read, well, their rap sheet is like 14, 15, 20, 25, who knows how many encounters with the law, arrest, some, and you go, how are these people out walking the streets? And so, and I know that's a general view, but that's the way most of us react, don't we? When you heard about this situation in Charlotte, you go, how is this fella walking around when even his own mother said he's a threat to society? He's a paranoid schizophrenic. Anyway, Abe,
yeah,
go ahead, talk about that.
No, it's a legitimate question, and I read it and I see the same thing. And you just had Zoran Mamdani. I played this clip on my show last night where he's saying we need to get people out of jail faster. He's not saying we need to have them adjudicated for the charges that they're facing. He said we just need to get them out of the jail. Like, is that the solution? Not to secure justice? That's not the solution at all. But it is greatly frustrating, and it's a question that is multifaceted, and it's hard to address it broadly because you have individual circumstances that vary. But generally speaking, we have circumstances where we have jurisdictions that do not enforce the law at the greatest extent possible. Now, each individual instance should be assessed in and of itself. Like you have a person who commits shoplifting, well, they shouldn't be put in prison for the rest of their lives.
Right.
But if you have a person who commits shoplifting and then they become an armed robber and then they become a home invader, then you have that kind of escalation that is transpiring. There should be the capacity within our justice system to assess the reality. People often say, does the punishment fit the crime? Well, actually, that really isn't the question. The question should be, does the punishment fit the criminal? Because when you're assessing punishment when a person is guilty of a particular crime, you have to take into consideration their history. Is this somebody who is escalating in criminality? Are they showing an increased disdain and antisocial behavior? Are they demonstrating an increasing lack of capacity to be a beneficiary of the freedoms that we enjoy in our country? That should be taken into consideration as well. You have two different people. You have one guy who may have a possession of drugs, and on his charge, he's possession of a small amount of drugs. Then on another charge, you have a murderer who is a drug dealer who has a long rap sheet for in a number of serious and egregious felonies, but it turns out witnesses disappear, witnesses have passed away, things of that nature. You don't have the evidence to prosecute the homicide, but you still have him with this small amount of drugs. Should that guy get the same amount of sentence as the person who has a first offense, small possession of drug for personal use? Of course not. But the only way you make that assessment is, does the punishment fit the criminal? Not does the punishment fit the crime exclusively.
Okay, I got a bunch of questions here, so guys, I don't even need you anymore.
Okay. I feel the not
make a
needed.
sandwich.
Okay, sure.
I'm already answering emails over here, so you just carry on.
All right.
And my answers will be shorter too.
That's okay. Says the pastor / lawyer. And the Bible says, "Thou shalt not lie." No. All right. It's not Abe's intent of the heart to tell an untruth. As my mom would say, don't call somebody a liar. You don't.
I know what you're saying.
Okay. Here we go. Here's a couple questions I have, because we did have Abe on to talk about this whole situation that frustrates Americans, and I think played a large part in the last election. The Democrats are seen as soft on crime, the Republicans seen as law and order. Now that's just a perception, and I think that played a part in some of the election results. But okay, I want to ask you about this, Abe. When people, a lot of people say that not so-called, but cashless bail, okay, is a problem. Okay, I want you to please tell me what cashless bail is, as opposed to what, and where do you come down on that?
Yeah, people that make that assertion usually are saying cashless bail is a problem because you have people who are staying in jail and only because they can't afford to bond out. But the issue is that this is in a circumstance where the criminal defense has not been adjudicated. The whole purpose of bail is to make sure that to try to enable the criminal justice system to move freely. So we have a person who's accused of a crime. If it's not dismissed, or the person doesn't plead guilty, well, they can have a trial of their peers in a reasonable amount of time. And what often happens in the law enforcement environment, when cases, and this is just a fact, when you have defendants who bond out, those cases usually take a longer time to prosecute. You ask any criminal justice attorney on either side, defense or prosecution, they'll tell you the longer a case lingers, the harder it's going to be for the prosecution to prove. And so you have people that are arguing and saying cashless bail is a problem, but really these are the same people that are like Zohran Mamdani, that they want those who have been accused of crime. They're more than willing than I am, and I think a lot of other Americans, to have people who have a reasonable likelihood of having committed a crime to regain their ability to live freely amongst us. So to say cashless bail is a problem, that is a decontextualized statement that requires some facts to determine whether or not that's actually true.
But aren't people of the liberal persuasion, so to speak, going to say, okay, the reason we have cashless bail is because it's unfair for people who are poor, who are accused of crimes? They don't have the money to put up the bail, whereas people who are middle income or wealthier have the money to put up for bail. So there you have an injustice. Isn't that what they would say?
That is what they would say. And that, once again, that would be a statement that's made in pure ignorance. It's very similar to the point that Wesley was making earlier. A lot of people are invoking empathy for the murderer in North Carolina. Who is talking about empathy for the victim and their family? In this instance, the beginning of the assessment shouldn't be with the charged party of the crime, because the reality is bail only escalates based on criminal history. If you have a person who is charged with a crime, they don't have an extensive rap sheet, they often will be released upon their own recognizance, also known as cashless bail, or they'll have a very, 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 very low bail. The only time bails get higher is when you have people who have demonstrated over time their propensity to commit crime. And the purpose for the bonding and the bailing process is not only to facilitate that individual charge, but also to keep the community safe in the process of this charge being adjudicated. And that is often left out of the discourse. Bail only escalates based on criminal history and the imminent danger presented by the particular charged party. It's not a general application of high bails for everybody who gets arrested.
Well, I have one last question, Counselor. Okay, I also hear this from from people in law enforcement, and then you go to asking these kind of questions. I'm asking you, why can't we keep the bad people in prison or in jail? I hear this too. Well, the prisons, the jails are full. They're overflowing, and the public doesn't want to spend the money to build more. Because that's not a popular thing to run on as a politician. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what I hear, that the overcrowding in prisons and jails, is that part of the equation here, or go ahead?
Well, no? So keeping the bad people in jail is an issue primarily for jails more than prisons. You do have overcrowding in some instances, but the issue of having proper incarceration facilities it's a law enforcement issue. It's an issue of keeping your society safe, keeping your community safe. And so to say that it's not a popular issue to run on, I understand that to some degree, but at the same time, I would encourage those who are politicians to argue it in that fashion, that this is about public safety. We got to have the facilities to keep people incarcerated who need to be incarcerated, and so we need to have the facilities to do that.
This is Wesley here. So as Dad pointed out earlier, that even I mentioned yesterday the importance of all Americans to exercise their Second Amendment, but especially women, elderly, those that are more vulnerable. Now, that's true, and Dad pointed out, well, in this case, this woman couldn't have, she couldn't have used it anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it couldn't have necessarily
She never had a chance.
She didn't have a chance. I understand. Yeah. That's true. My point, both things are true, because I still believe Americans should practice their Second Amendment for self-defense. However, my question is to you is, could this still have been avoided from him being kept in jail standpoint? You know what I'm saying? Like, it still could have been. Could this?
In other words, he shouldn't have been out on the train in the first place.
Is it fair to say that?
Okay.
Well, could have versus should have is the operative assessment there.
Okay.
Could it have been prevented if he had been kept in jail? Yes. Should it have happened? That's hard to say, because he has a pretty extensive criminal history, but some of the more recent crimes aren't the types of ones that he would have a protracted incarceration anyway. So this is just one of those scenarios where you have a combination of, in my mind, frankly, I think some demonic influence. and just evil that was brought to bear on this issue. And to your point about the Second Amendment, I do think as more people, especially women, take advantage of their Second Amendment rights, that you will have a less likelihood of things like this happening. You know, in places where people are known to avail themselves of our constitutional right to keep and bear arms, you don't see as much of these things transpiring. You tend to see these things happening generally. Now, there are always exceptions, but generally these things tend to happen in environments where it's kind of like soft targets, where you don't have a proliferation of Second Amendment adherence.
You know, just watching that, didn't she get on the train? And he was already on there, right? Since she sat down. So I'm just going to, being from the Ukraine, she may not have known many people. She may not have been wise to the world to say a young lady like that doesn't need to be getting on a train late at night anyway.
Well, and I'll say something else too. You've got to your point, Tim, about being streetwise. She came in head down, looking at her phone, sat down without looking around. I'm looking at the picture, and I see on one side of the train, if I'm getting on, you got to be able to glance. I see three people who I would not ordinarily think would be a threat. Mm-hmm. There's a lady, a guy, another guy in the back, just a hat. But DeCarlos Brown was in his seat with his hood pulled up. I'm not making fun of hoods, okay? But if someone is hunched over, head down, with a hood on, I'm not sitting in front of that guy. Okay, right, so you've got to be able, and I'm not blaming her.
That's what I mean. She may not have been wise.
She may not have been wise. You've got to make immediate assessments, and I'm thinking, what, you don't sit right in front of somebody you don't know and then put your head down.
Look at the three people looking as he stabs her.
That's what we talked about earlier.
They're looking at her, and they're like, like what's going on?
Well, she probably cried out, and then they looked at her because of that. And I don't know. This whole thing
just minutes later, she was bled out. She was dead.
This is a terrible thing. I do want to say one additional quick thing to what Abe was saying. By the way, Abraham Hamilton III has been our guest during this segment. Heard on the Hamilton Corner, heard weekdays at 5 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio. I'm all in favor of building more prisons, but it's not just the money. Nobody wants prisons built near their neighborhoods.
Near their neighborhoods.
Yeah, and so
that's a good point.
That is, I remember there was a big discussion. I think it was in Michigan or Ohio several years ago. Everyone was saying we don't want it near. We need it, but we don't want it near us because of escaped criminals and that kind of thing. So this is a complicated issue.
Your value of your neighborhood goes down.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a prison, but even in the next county.
You're in the swamps of Florida, then.
Well, that's what Florida did. Alligator Alcatraz.
All right, Abe, thanks so much. What are you going to be covering this afternoon on the Hamilton Corner?
Yeah, yesterday on the show we talked a bit about this whole episode at Texas A&M University, where this professor was indoctrinating these students in elementary education in the children's literature course. Well, today the news broke that professor has been fired. So they hadn't fired her now, but it seems like the pressure has ramped up to such a degree to where that professor has been fired.
What did she do?
We're going to dig into that a little bit. Yeah, you had a college professor at the Texas A&M University in College Station who was teaching a children's literature course and basically was indoctrinating the students concerning LGBTQ, all of those things to prepare them to teach children. And you had a student in the class who objected and saying, wait, the president has passed an executive order that says you can't do this kind of things. And the state of Texas also has legislation against DEI training, things of that nature. And so she objected to the teacher, got kicked out of class, sought an audience with the president of the university. Initially, the president said, oh, would you want us to fire the professor? That's not going to happen. Well, then that college president came out and reversed course a bit and saying, well, the dean of that department and the chair of that department have now been removed, and now that professor has been fired. And so all of that was caught on video. And after it went viral, the Texas A&M president began to change his tune a little bit.
All right, Brother Abe, we'll be looking forward to the Hamilton Corner this afternoon. Take care.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, you're listening to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Next story, Fred.
Well, I think it's about 3 weeks ago that we had this summit between President Trump and Putin, the Russian leader Putin.
Yeah.
And there was a degree of optimism. they acted like old friends. And coming out of it, there was talk that, there was going to be a next summit with Zelensky, the Ukrainian leader, involved. But almost immediately, Putin began to up his war efforts against Ukraine. And things have gone from bad to worse. He is targeting civilian targets. But now this morning, there is a new element in this. The headline is this: Poland says it shot down Russian drones that violated its airspace. Poland is a NATO country. Mm-hmm. This raises the level. If Putin is so determined to win the war against Ukraine that he's willing to even now irritate NATO countries and the United States into a position where they have to come and get involved militarily because a NATO country perhaps has been deliberately attacked by Russia. This brings a whole new element to this war, and the question a lot of people are asking, okay, where do we go from here? Are we going to tolerate this? Russian drones inside Poland's border.
You know how I look at this? No, Tim, how do you look at this? I think Russia and Vladimir Putin, you know the bully on the playground?
Sure.
Who's out there and he goes, he pushes a smaller kid to the ground and he goes, what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
So what are you going to do? Like, there's nothing you can do about it because I'm bigger and badder than you. So I think Putin is, and then you have other people watching this who are as big as the bully, or bigger, who could step in to stop it, but won't for whatever reason. I know I'm using maybe a bad analogy here.
You were good up until that last point.
Well, so they just push Ukraine around and bomb their cities and everything like that. And I know Ukraine's fighting back. I understand that. But I just think Vladimir Putin, and he doesn't care. He can meet with Trump in Alaska and get on the plane going home and laugh in his face, laugh about the meeting, how he duped Trump again. You see what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I'm looking at this. But drones in Poland, that's a NATO situation.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and this wasn't just like one drone that got off course. The report is 19 of these drones entered the country's airspace overnight, and I don't think that this is the first time this has happened. So to your point, Tim, I think this is Putin testing maybe the air defenses and the willingness of these countries to fight back. Poland is no slouch militarily, and I would think Putin's military has got to be trying to rein this guy in. Putin, I mean, because you do not want to start a war with a NATO country. You'll have all of NATO, and that includes the United States, being obligated to get into it. He might get pushed out of Ukraine at that point.
Well, what if Vladimir Putin says, what are you going to do about it?
Well, if he attacks Poland, he'll lose. Putin will lose if he starts a war with NATO.
Right.
My fear is that if that happens, he'll use nukes.
You think this was a mistake on the part of the Russian military?
I think it's just what you said. I think Putin's going, we might want Poland. We might want Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
And I know the U.S. is not getting involved because Trump already told me they're not going to get involved.
Right.
But directly militarily.
Yes.
Right. We'll be back after this short timeout.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
How do you choose to stay informed? Sure, you can find all kinds of sources for information and commentary, but when you want them from a Christian perspective, turn to The Stand. Whether you choose to read the online blog or get the print version delivered to your mailbox, you can rest assured you'll receive factual news and biblically sound commentary. Find out more today at afa.net/thestand.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Democrats continue to resist President Trump's efforts to fight crime in major cities by removing dangerous illegal alien criminals. The Department of Homeland Security announced Operation Midway Blitz in honor of Katie Abraham, who was killed in a drunk driving hit-and-run car wreck caused by a criminal illegal alien in Illinois. This ICE operation will target the criminal illegal aliens who flock to Chicago and Illinois because they know Governor J.B. Pritzker and his sanctuary policies would protect them and allow them to roam free on American streets. But Governor Pritzker is still opposed to it.
We are trying to protect all the residents of the state of Illinois. These are people who, people talk about, Donald Trump likes to talk about immigrants as criminals. These are not criminals. These are people who are genuinely here in this country, holding down jobs. They've been here for 10, 20, 30 years, raising families here, paying taxes, following the law, doing the right thing.
Border Czar Tom Homan can't understand Democrats who put criminals before their own citizens.
Pritzker is wrong. He says that, he doesn't understand. These illegal aliens that he thinks are citizens and paying taxes, they cheated the system. There are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigations, paying their fees to be part of the greatest nation on earth. Every one of these people broke the law. It's a crime to enter this country illegally, and we can't reward illegal behaviors.
The career criminal who stabbed to death a Ukrainian refugee on a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina, is facing new charges. Attorney General Pam Bondi says DeCarlos Brown Jr. was arrested on state charges at the scene of the murder and now has federal charges against him.
He'll be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. He had 14 prior arrests. He had been to prison before.
FBI Special Agent James Barnacle says this person should not have been on the street.
The system has failed us in this case. There is no doubt. Everyone deserves to go about their daily lives, to get to work, to get to school, just across town without the fear of being attacked.
Former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer says the problem is too many cities treating people as a mental illness problem instead of a public safety problem.
If you're treating for mental illness, you're often never going to cure the problem. That's the sad nature of mental illness. But if there's a public safety risk, what it means is you just have to put the person in prison. They're not going to get treated for mental illness, but they'll be off the streets and people will be safer. That's the reality that society has to deal with. But in all too many cities and often under Democratic leadership, they just make the excuses. It's mental illness, so what are we going to do? You're free to commit your first murder, and only then will we take it seriously.
Middle school girls in California recently walked out of a first period class, protesting a board policy that allows boys to undress next to girls in locker rooms. Bob Kellogg reports.
Both female and male students and parents stood together at James L. Day Middle School to protest the policy. Sophia Laurie of the California Family Council said there was a small group of transgender supporters across the street.
It's an ideology that's being pushed, and all the kids, all the girls are suffering because of it, as well as it's a safety issue. We shouldn't have to see girls having to undress or be in a locker room or restrooms with a male.
The parents also object to the board's accommodations that girls can opt out because of mental health or religious reasons.
Their daughters should not have to say that they have a mental health issue because they don't want to undress next to a male. That's actually normal. That's common sense. And even the families that are religious families, they don't believe you have to be Christian, Mormon, Muslim, whatever you are, to say, I don't want to undress next to a male.
Two board members, Dr. Joseph Komrosky and Jen Wiersma, attended the walkout to show their support for the girls. I'm Bob Kellogg.
On Wall Street, futures are mixed. Oil prices are up. More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hello, my name is Andy Miller, and I'm the president of Wesley Biblical Seminary based in Ridgeland, Mississippi. We are developing trusted leaders for faithful churches, and we do that based in the authority of Scripture and in the reality that Christians can be transformed. We do that also through bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. We'd love for you to learn more about Wesley Biblical Seminary at wbs.edu, where we're developing trusted leaders for faithful churches.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildmon, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network, where we solve the world's problems 1 hour at a time.
One story at a time.
And one story at a time. We got an hour and a half of this show. We got 25 more minutes left. Tim, Ed, and Wesley, and now joining us, Steve Paisley Jordahl.
Good morning, everybody, and afternoon if you're on the East Coast, and good evening if you're in Moscow. I would think.
Yeah.
Sure.
They're
there.
Yeah.
We do got, with the app, we do have people.
We have listeners around the world.
We do.
Yeah. So, Steve, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Or good, as you say, good afternoon to those listening in the Eastern time zone, although we're in the Central, so to you, it's good morning.
It's still morning.
All right, so what's your first story for us, Brother Steve?
Well, I think it's time we had a talk.
That's all we've been doing.
I know. There's been some stuff going on in the government and in reality that is, under normal circumstances, I would say like 20 years ago would have consumed our media, our attention. We would be talking about nothing else but, and it is, what are those unidentified objects in the sky? There have been a number of what the government is calling UAP. They're calling that unidentified anomalous phenomena. They do that so that because the UFO is used to associate a lot of with extraterrestrial aliens, and they want to kind of get away from that kind of thing, so they're calling them UAPs. But they have no idea. There's a committee. It's called the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets that met last week, a couple days ago, I should say, and they had some very credible former members of the military, pilots, and these congressmen asked them about their encounters. I want to play you a little bit of one of the questions. You're going to hear, first of all, from former service member Jeffrey Nucatelli, and then you're going to hear Chad Pergram, the Fox reporter who's bringing this report, talk about something that Representative Eric Burleson from Missouri is going to say. Cut 17.
Chaos ensued over the radio as the object approached rapidly. I heard my friends screaming, "It's coming right at us. It's coming right for us."
GOP Missouri Congressman Eric Burleson showed an alarming video leaked to him anonymously. Burleson contends it shows a U.S. drone firing a Hellfire missile at a UAP off the coast of Yemen last fall.
It pivots in some way, and then there's what appears to be debris from the missile. The missile is deflected, and then some pieces of debris appear to be traveling alongside and with this object for an extended period of time.
I'm just now looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen it during the last segment, the headline. I wanted to click on it, but we were in the middle of a conversation. This is pretty shocking.
I know.
This is a Hellfire missile fired at this UAP. Again, that's an unidentified aerial phenomena. And the missile bounces off this thing.
As far as we know, there is no technology that would deflect a Hellfire missile like that.
Got two questions. One, is it possible that the missile could have been a dud? Next question would be, where did the object end up?
I don't know. They didn't track it much further than the video shows, so I don't know where it was going or where it came from.
This story, which I'm reading on Fox now, this is journalist George Knapp who I'm familiar with him. He's all in on the extraterrestrial hypothesis, is what it's called, that these kinds of objects are off planet, they're alien. Okay, so he is going to be biased, but this is what he says. That's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO, and it just bounced right off, and it kept going. And he says there are servers, meaning where you store videos, where there's a whole bank of these kind of videos that Congress has not been allowed to see. Now, one of the first questions I would ask, and this is surprising, this is going to surprise people, but Congress is not necessarily allowed to see what we've got in terms of technology. That if this is a test of a U.S. Technology, they may be testing to see how it responds in the event of it being struck by a missile. I can't answer your question, Wesley, in terms of it being a dud. I think it's very rare for a Hellfire missile to be a dud and not detonate. But I don't know. My tendency is to think this is our technology that we are testing, and Congress is probably not going to be told.
Let me ask you this too. This is a whole new world for me, so I may ask some very basic questions for y'all. But
I'm not getting into it in detail because last time I did, Tim made fun of me.
Okay. You remember that?
I do.
Hey, why would we? I guess that was an American missile shooting at the unidentified object.
It was.
Okay, then why? If we don't know what it is, why are we just shooting at it?
It was off the coast.
So is it a threat?
It wasn't dangerous, probably. It wasn't. These things have been filmed flying over cities.
So then, why are we shooting? I guess what I'm saying is, what do we consider these things a threat, or did it cross a line?
There's just so much that is unknown. First of all, we have no, at least publicly, there's no knowledge of something that would have that kind of propulsion. These things are known to be hypersonic. They change directions in an instant. They go from water to air without any visible disruption. Doesn't even splash when it goes into the water. And they've been tracked. I don't know. This would be like Hal Lindsey would be out there preaching on the street corner and everybody would be listening to him if this was 20 years ago. And it just it's just ho-hum.
Can they leap buildings with a single...
It seems to be able to, yes.
Single bound. Well, what's puzzling about some of the imagery is that the acceleration you're talking about, Steve, according to the laws of physics, should create a sonic boom.
Right.
That's how fast these things go, but it doesn't. And there is no physical technology, period, that can where a physical object can hit the water without causing a splash. That's why there's some question in my mind whether all these things are physical, and we're talking about physical technology, or whether it's metaphysical. Anyway, that's where I got myself into trouble the last time we talked about it. Metaphysical would mean spiritual.
Well, there is a line of discussion among people who think that these phenomena are a form of demonic deception designed to lead people away from God and into the occult. Some interpret that the UAPs are demonic entities masquerading as otherworldly beings. By the way, I got this all from AI. Thank you very much.
You could have just come to my office.
I could have just come to your office, but I didn't. I got to AI.
But I would have shut the door while we talked.
So the proponents of this view believe that the phenomena of UAPs and the fascination with aliens serve as a deliberate distraction, drawing people away from religious faith and towards occult practices. I don't know about that. Anyway, but they think that this may be the physical manifestation of the spiritual realm. This does some weird things to... I know.
I'm looking at Tim's.
This does some weird things to your theology if you want to start talking about extraterrestrial beings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to envelop that into my theology.
You go for it, Steve.
No, I don't know.
Answers in Genesis covers this a good bit.
Do they?
Yeah, you could go to their website.
There's some excellent books on this subject.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've never seen video like this with a missile bouncing off it. So that's the kind of thing that makes me think. And to answer your question, Wesley, why would we be opening fire on it? We probably have rules of engagement, and where my opinion is some of this is our technology, and we want a real-world test for its capabilities. So you don't tell the military, the guy flying the drone, that this is our tech. You want to test our military capabilities against this new technology, because if we use it against the Chinese, we want to know how they would respond. So you have rules of engagement where you say, if this is not overpopulated area, open fire on it. Mm-hmm. Okay? You issue warnings, and you say, halt or whatever they say, and then you fire, and we want to test and see how good it does against conventional weapons. That's just...
Where can people watch? That video was...
it's on Fox.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, if you look for UFO hearing or UAP hearing, the video is likely to come up.
I do wonder why we fired at it. Did it fire at us?
I just see, I see a movie set with the generals. Like, I don't know. You remember the movie where it was Matthew Broderick? I think. Do you want to play a game? And
War Games.
War Games. And they're sitting in this thing. They're watching this thing, and one of the generals says, "Hey, well, let's throw a Spitfire at it. See what it does." Yeah, I don't know.
Well, there are concerns that if this is not our technology, and maybe it's Russian, maybe it's Chinese, or maybe it's nobody's here on Earth, we want to be prepared. So the reason we would fire at it is either we're testing our own technology, or we want to know how our technology stacks up against it.
Yeah.
But if it is extraterrestrial, right? If it is from outer space coming to our planet, and the first thing we do while it's trying to be friendly, you know what I'm saying, flying around our planet, is we start firing, trying to destroy it. I mean, is that a way to win friends and influence beings
from another planet?
I would just ask the question. I don't have an answer. It's an open answer.
I'll just tell you what my answer is.
What's your answer?
They weren't invited, and if they turn out to be hostile, we need to know what we can do to defend ourselves.
We can't send a Hellcat weapon,
Hellfire missile,
because it bounces off.
All right, I just thought we needed to have the conversation. Thank you, gentlemen.
It is for listen. I'll talk about this all day long.
Yeah,
I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah,
but I don't
sure
think...
you do.
Yeah, no, it is unexplained.
Yep.
It is. I mean, this is not a. What we saw there on the video, and they're describing there. Next story, Steve.
All right. I want to take us to some of the brainiacs on the opposite side of the aisle from Republicans in Congress.
That's what I was called in high school.
Yeah, I bet. Specifically, I want to play something that Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas is saying. And now she has become kind of the new voice of the ultra-radical Democrats. The squad is...
She's the Texas version of AOC,
right?
Yep. Okay, she's the brisket AOC,
and she was talking. She was on a on a podcast called Grounded, and she was asked about law enforcement. And I mean, I don't know about this, but this is what she had to say. Cut 16.
I want to be clear that law enforcement isn't to prevent crime. Law enforcement solves crime. Okay. That is what they are supposed to do. They are supposed to solve crimes, not necessarily prevent them from happening, per se.
I hear the Scooby-Doo go, "Arr?"
She is a United States House of Representatives member from Dallas area, right?
Yes.
All right.
That's a ridiculous thing to say. They can do more than one job at a time. It's been demonstrated in cities that having a greater police presence in high crime areas
per se
tends to dampen the amount of crime.
Well, I mean, come on. If you got a cop on the corner, you're going to break into the jewelry store right there? You're not going to
Any idea what she's responding to right there? What you're talking about?
She's responding to, I think she's taking the narrative that these troops that Donald Trump wants to send into Chicago, that he sent into Washington, D.C., aren't preventing crime. They don't prevent crime. They solve crime.
Well, that's ridiculous.
I know it is.
No, that would be called a detective. So a detective solves crimes. And then a police officer prevents crimes.
Yeah, and oftentimes...
Or responds to crimes.
Oftentimes just the presence of police will prevent a crime. That's what's happening in Washington, D.C. You put National Guardsmen on every corner, the criminals see that, and they don't want to open themselves up to being caught.
That was kind of the purpose of sending them.
Have y'all also noticed this... where blue police lights are being used where there are none?
Yes.
Have y'all noticed this?
No. What? I see.
But they're
you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, but they are. But let's be very clear. They're put up by law enforcement. Though these are not blue lights that are put up by civilians to trick you.
No. Well, maybe so. But I've seen a couple of them on private property. What I'm talking about.
Okay, I have not seen that.
I'm talking about blue lights being used.
You have to be careful though. You don't want to impersonate a cop.
It's not. There's nothing. It's like a blue light being put on a light pole somewhere or something. You got a business. I've seen them at businesses that are closed, obviously at night, and they put a little blue light up there. Now it's not necessarily flashing like a police officer's lights on a car, but it's what I'm saying. It's a psychological. When I see it, you think police.
Okay, so that's different.
I think it's a deterrent, psychological deterrent for people to be in places, thinking maybe what you said, that the police themselves have a spy camera on them or something.
Well, the ones I referred to are the ones mostly for speeding. So throughout the highway or in town, the police, and in daylight, you can see that it's got the police emblem on there, the local police department, and that flashes blue at night in areas that people usually speed.
It might be in higher crime areas, someplace to indicate that if people go to that blue light, there's a place they can communicate with the police, like a phone you can pick up and say, "Hey, this happened or not."
Well, I was always told, if you're in trouble, don't move towards the white light, but the blue light.
Blue light. They didn't say anything about the blue light.
I was told to drop and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll.
Huh?
Stop, drop, and roll.
Stop, drop, and roll. That's what I was taught. Next story, Steve.
All right. They are doing some really good medical stuff with mice, I would have to say. Stanford researchers found that overactive neurons in the, and I'm going to lean on you, Tim, to tell me what this is, but the reticular thalamic nucleus drive autism-like behaviors in mice. Neurons in the reticular thalamic nucleus. That's where they are seeing autism-like behaviors in mice, and they found some medicine, a way to control the autism. They took autism away from autistic mice, and they started behaving normal.
And what was it that they gave? What was the medicine?
Good question. That's a good question.
It wasn't a medicine. It was calming the neurons with a calcium channel blocker.
Yeah.
They called the neurons with Z944.
I actually did that as my science project. In the 11th grade.
Yeah.
Those calcium channel blockers.
Yeah, I did that. It was new. Nobody knew what I was doing. So I got a C- because the science teacher couldn't appreciate what I was doing.
This is why I'm leaning
Tell them
on
what
you.
I was doing again, Steve.
You were calming the neurons.
Explain it again.
The neurons in the reticular thalamic nucleus with Z944 calcium channel blockers is what you did.
In short, I was helping these mice.
You were.
Ed, what would you have done?
Calming the what? What was the?
Yeah, thalamic.
The neurons.
Like Thelma and Louise.
Nothing is worse than neurons that need to be calmed. Well, if they're overly excited, neurons. It can
metaphor.
I will tell you
cause all kinds of problems.
All right, how do you stop this right here? Steve, we got 5 minutes. Tell us what the serious issue is.
There is
because, I try to hold this thing together.
I know.
Ed, Wesley
you
over
do.
here,
I'm sorry.
taking us in all kind of different directions.
I'm sorry I interrupted your serious discussion about your science project.
There is a huge uptick in autism births, and the researchers are trying to figure out what causes it, and they might have had a breakthrough with mice.
Gotcha.
It's a long ways from being able to do something with humans with autism, but it's something that's kind of interesting that they've been able to find a way to revert autistic mice to normal behavior.
Well,
with
and
this
also
process.
seriously, it is a step in the right direction to finding out what triggers these neurons, and then all that other stuff you said. I won't belabor the listening audience with asking Tim to explain it all, but it is a step.
I could, but it would bore people.
Yeah. It could be a step in the right direction, not only of interrupting it and curing it, but also figuring out what triggers it.
That's what they're
next
hoping.
Story.
Wait, what were we talking about again? I'm just kidding.
No, we can talk about this off the air.
Yeah.
We can talk about this at lunch if you like. Huh?
I got a book on
You
it.
want to talk about this at lunch?
You have a book on it.
Audio book.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
Apple is announcing it's had one of its launches. Every so often, Apple rents a huge hall in the Bay Area, and they get their CEO or whoever, Tim Cook, or was in the day was the guy with the turtleneck sweaters.
I know you're talking about
Steve Jobs.
Oh, Steve Jobs. Yeah.
He would demonstrate the new upcoming products from Apple. Well, they still have these things. They're called launches, and it had its biggest launch of the year on September 19th, and this is what it announced. It announced new iPhones and Apple Watches that will go on sale September 19th. Most of it was about pricing and new technology, but they had something that I thought was really kind of cool. The new Apple AirPod Pro 3 that they're going to introduce have improved audio quality and noise canceling. One new feature is that they will be able to translate conversations in foreign languages in real time.
That could be actually beneficial.
Wow. So you put these AirPods in and you can have a conversation.
Right.
Well, you can understand.
You can understand what they're saying. It doesn't translate.
You.
It doesn't translate individual words. The meaning of each phrase is translated to you. So when you talk, you just speak naturally.
And the AI.
The
AI interprets for you to the other individual who doesn't speak that language.
I don't know.
No,
they
it
would
sounds
have to have
like
a pair too, I guess.
the AirPods that you hear someone speaking like in French,
right?
And then the AI
is interpreting
translates you, and so that you're hearing it in your language.
As far as communicating back to them, you give them a pair.
It's like an interpreter.
Yeah,
except it's computer generated.
I thought that was pretty incredible. Cool, yeah.
And it's in real time, so there's not much of a delay.
Let me ask you this: if you go to Boston, can you get it? Will they interpret that for you?
Southern accent.
There's no pocket
Not in
in Harvard Yard.
I don't think it works because I know my iPhone doesn't translate what I say when I speak into it. I have to go and correct it.
Like Wesley said, there are some Southern accents that would need.
That's true.
That would need interpreting.
Just think of how that would go on a European vacation, though. Donde está la baño?
Where's the bathroom?
Where's the bathroom? There you go.
Yep. Baño.
Los baños.
All right, so we got like 45 seconds, or how long we got till music starts?
About 20 seconds. There's a
Okay.
2,000-year-old Roman hall. They found the Church of Laodicea.
Really?
Archaeologists have. They're kind of neutral about. They're kind of hot and cold about whether
I
it's.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Good place to be or
Well
not.
played.
They didn't even wait for me on that one.
It's in Turkey. The site holds carvings to early Christian worship, and the Anadolu Agency announced this in August. They have found Laodicea.
They're discovering all kinds of Israel and in Turkey and Jordan. They're finding all kinds
Egypt
of stuff.
too. They're finding artifacts that confirm what the Bible says.
Yes.
About history.
Now I will say I wasn't too thrilled what they found in Egypt a couple of weeks ago. It was a mummy, but there was a warning not to open the sarcophagus. Or the mummy would come to life and bring doom and destruction.
And Brandon Fraser did, didn't he?
Right. He's a big boy now.
Yeah.
You seen him?
Yeah.
All right. We will take a break now for 22 2.5 hours.
That's great.
Gotta warm up for the next episode.
We'll be back here tomorrow. We hope you have a great day. Keep listening to AFR.